You're listening to WICR, Iona College Radio.
From the third floor in the Murphy Center building, I am your host, Rocky DePaula, joined by Gregor Hope Murray. And Gregor, we have an interesting topic of discussion today. The regression of quarterback play. Now, as we saw this weekend, both Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers had their struggles. Give us your take on what you saw in their games.
Okay, I'm going to start with the one that people have been seeing coming, which is Peyton Manning. He looked dread-awful at the beginning of the season. He was not he was not himself. He wasn't throwing to the same level that he was known for throwing for. He was having issues throwing the ball downfield. You could see it in his throwing motion. He had to really put his body weight into throwing the ball. It was not just, his easy, I'll just throw it up and it'll be easily.
He's also underthrowing it as well. And, that's something I recognized, even not prior to this year, but also like the beginning of his first year during his tenure with the Broncos. I remember it was a Monday night game, week 2 in Atlanta, and he threw like 3 interceptions in like the first quarter, which is unlike Peyton.
Mm-hmm.
But his interceptions, though, I realize it's not like the ball is getting tipped or he's just missing his wide receivers. He's underthrowing it, which shows that he's showing a lack of arm strength.
No, this was definitely Peyton Manning's regression has been. There's been signs for it for the last few seasons, as you said, and good football fans and good analysts can see that.
You don't even have to be you don't have to have like a high football IQ or be, a football fanatic to know that Peyton Manning's, declining.
Well, yeah, you don't need to be one, but it was a little harder to see in the previous seasons. This season, anyone can see it. Anyone can
very conspicuous.
Anyone can take a look at him and say, this guy is a pro football quarterback.
I think Father Time has finally reached up to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that happened to Brett Favre, and it's the same thing that happened to Manning. And I'm hoping Manning, at the end of this year, will take a look at what he's achieved in his career and says, okay, maybe I'm done. Because the last thing I would like to see happen to Manning is what happened to Brett Favre, which is he played beyond his years to the point where the younger generation who saw Brett Favre only know him as the bad quarterback that kept throwing interceptions, who kept getting injured, the old guy that should have just retired 5 years ago. And I don't want that to be Peyton Manning's career. I don't want his career to be the guy that all of a sudden turns into the bad quarterback and says, why are these teams playing with him? And I'm hoping that he realizes that he cannot play at this level anymore. And we saw that this Sunday where
he threw 4 interceptions. He was 5 of 20 for 74 yards or something like that.
5 completions to his own team, 4 completions to the other. Someone did some quick math on it, and they said that his passer rating to the other team was better than his passer rating to his own team because the passing yards that he was throwing for to the other team was much greater than the passing yards he was getting on his own. So, they say that he's going to be benched for at least this next coming game. That was claimed to be due to injury, but there's a little bit of speculation saying that this may be a permanent fix for the Broncos. They may be saying we need to save our season, and maybe Manning is not the guy that can do it. And honestly, I think they're smart for saying that, at least until maybe if you keep him healthy until the postseason, maybe then you can start thinking of bringing him back in when he is healthy.
But as you know, Brock Osweiler's getting the start this week on the road against the Bears. How do you think does this quarterback change deplete the Broncos' Super Bowl chances, in your opinion?
Well,
I mean, they're 7-2. They're going to get a top 3 seed because the winner of the AFC South is going to get the 4th seed. Let's just make that clear. So they're going to get at least a 3 seed, no less than a 3 seed.
So Super Bowl chances. They were already pretty low with Manning even in.
No, I thought I gave them a chance because the defense.
Well, there's the defense, but when you have teams like the Cincinnati Bengals and the New England Patriots in the AFC, you realize that defense alone is not going to be enough to get you to the Super Bowl. They're going to hit the playoffs. They're going to get there. They'll probably reach it into the divisional round. I'll give them that far. AFC Championship, I don't think they're going to get that far. I think it was slim with Manning in there because he was only going to slow down at the end of the season.
Maybe they win one game in the playoffs, and then who knows? I give them no more than one victory.
That's all I'm giving them too.
Yeah. Unless, the defense can be, unless the Bronco defense can be reminiscent of the 2000 Ravens and just carry the team to the Super Bowl.
Look, they're a good team. They're a good defense.
Just throwing that out there,
Yeah, but they're a good defense. But you need at least some form of offense, and they do not have that going right now.
But we've seen in Super Bowl history, we've seen great defenses carry teams with weak quarterbacks, like the 2000 Ravens with Trent Dilfer, or the 2002 Buccaneers with Brad Johnson. Or even, with the Giants in 1990 with Jeff Hofstetter after the Phil Simms injury.
See, I'm gonna rag on the Broncos a little bit. They haven't played a lot of top offenses so far this year, and the top offenses they have played were the Packers, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And in terms of offenses that they played, they're not, anything stellar. And the Colts was one of the few teams that gave them a run for their money and beat them. And that's the teams that they're going to see in the postseason here. It's going to be the Bengals. It's going to be the Colts. It's going to be the Patriots. These are all teams with potentially high-scoring offenses. And I don't think the Broncos' defense is actually to that same level as maybe like last year's Seahawks defense. I don't think they're to that level where they can hold out a top offense.
But like you said, you have a valid point, but let's see what happens, because the playoffs is just a crapshoot, because anyone could win.
Yeah, it's whoever gets hot at the right time.
Now, moving on to our next team, Aaron Rodgers. His team has been struggling the last 2 weeks. Now, look, I understand they played a Bronco defense and a Carolina Panther defense, both on the road. So you know what? It's not. Was it a surprise that they lost? No, not entirely.
Not in those two games. Those two games were.
This past Sunday, when they lost to the Detroit Lions, who haven't won a game since December 15th, 1991, nearly 24 years, and they just their offense looked stagnant. They were out of rhythm, So what's going on in Green Bay?
Well, Mike McCarthy recently said that Rodgers is playing through an injury right now.
What injury would that be?
The same injury every other NFL player is dealing with.
Calf?
No. Huh. Listen, at this point in the season, like 80% of the NFL is injured. He says that Rodgers is battling an injury. It's not sure what exactly the injury is, but
maybe that's just a front to cover the
fact
that
exactly.
He's been, horribly.
It's the coach defending his quarterback there. Look, there's no excuse for the Packers losing to the Detroit Lions in the last week's game. They had excuses for the Broncos game, and they had an excuse for the Panthers game. They're both undefeated teams at the time on the road. That's really hard to deal with. But a 1-7 Broncos Lions team,
roar.
That's just unexplainable. Like, where is the issue? And when I look at it, if you look at the tape, it's a case of Rodgers' receivers are not getting open enough for him to be able to feel confident in throwing the ball to them. There's no separation between what he has and what he is used to having. Let's face it, the Packers cannot get the ball moving without Jordy Nelson. They were really hoping on Randall Cobb and James Jones to carry them a little bit through this season.
James Jones, both those players, James Jones and Randall Cobb, they showed some strides this year.
Well, Randall Cobb did.
The Giants can use James Jones right now.
Well, Randall Cobb showed some strides. Unfortunately, he's now receiving the double team, and James Jones has actually unfortunately regressed. I have him on my fantasy team.
But he did show some strides, though, in the beginning of the years. He
was catching a few catches. He got about 5 receptions a game for the beginning of the year, but I think after week 5 or so, he's been dropping down to maybe 1 or 2 receptions a game. It's been really dipping, and he could just not get the separation that he needed in order to help the Packers win. And let's be honest here, the Packers had the opportunity to win this game twice.
Oh, the Lions missed 2 extra points. Then Calvin Johnson muffing the onside kick, and then the missed field goal. And if you watch that play, initially it looked like the ball got tipped, like a defender hit it away or hit it off a defender's hand. But if you watch the replay again, it was just kicked poorly.
Yeah. No, when I said they had 2 chances, I mean Rodgers had 2 chances to win this game. They had a 2-point conversion that they could have gotten to tie the game, missed that, got the onside kick, and they still didn't put it within, I think, a good distance for their kicker to actually knock it through.
And also, don't forget the regression of Eddie Lacy, because he was initially, going into this year, he was the first string running back. Now he lost that privilege or lost that role to James Starks.
I've never actually been high on Eddie Lacy. There's always been a lot of hype around him, especially in terms of fantasy-wise, and I have never bought into Eddie Lacy because the one fact of the matter is he will never get enough touches for the football game for them to care about giving it to him. Good running backs need to Good running backs need to get the ball consistently, and
Right.
Rodgers is one of those quarterbacks that does not hand it off if he thinks he can do the job better than the running back, and that is very rarely the case. So Eddie Lacy's regression doesn't surprise me that much, but still, it's very sad to see when a team is very high on a running back like that, and he's just not producing. It kind of reminds me a lot of Lawrence Maroney on the Patriots from 2007. 2007, he had a great year, and then there's a lot of good hype around him, and then just completely regressed to the point where in 2009 he was like dancing in the backfield. He was trying to make openings that weren't there. He wasn't hitting the holes. It's one of those things. It sucks to see when you're meant to have a weapon and it regresses because it's just not doing what it's meant to do.
I wonder what Vince Lombardi would do if he saw this Packers playing like this. If he saw the Packers playing like this. Tear him a new one. Say,
yeah.
Have colorful language,
Yeah, no, it's very disappointing to see a team that has dominated its division consistently for the last few years.
And, the Packers ship, just want to throw this in, it's sinking, and it's sinking really fast.
Yeah, no, they've already lost that division.
And they're going to Minnesota, who has momentum and has won their last 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
So think about this. If the Vikings win this, Green Bay is in a lot of trouble. You might as well just throw out their Super Bowl aspirations goodbye, because they were one of the few favorites to win the Super Bowl going into this year.
If they don't win the Vikings game, that's a
Their
big
Super Bowl aspirations are gone.
That is a big loss, and I will actually agree with you on that
So
one.
it's pretty much
because the road through the NFC is not a pretty one. It is going through Carolina,
Arizona.
It's going through Arizona,
and you might have Minnesota, who's believe it or not, is actually a good team. Watching them, They have a great running game, good wide receivers, and a great defense.
So whether or
coached
not
by Mike Zimmer,
whether or not it's Rodgers being injured that's causing this issue, or if it's just his receivers, I personally think it's the receivers, and the injury thing is just McCarthy trying to, defend his quarterback. Listen, everyone's injured at this point in the season. You're a quarterback. You take a hit every single week on a regular basis. You're gonna be hurting. It's to be expected. I think most of the blame for Rodgers' problems right now lies on his receivers. And it's just very surprising to see that Rodgers is not capable of helping them elevate to another level. The same way, Brady had those really bad ones back in 2013, where he just had receivers that couldn't catch balls, couldn't, get the job done. But he still got some of his stats going and could win games. And you're just not seeing that from Rodgers and his receivers this year. And they've got to figure out fast how to get them to contribute more.
Well, it should be an interesting final 6 weeks of the NFL season, and we'll see what happens. Looking forward to it. I'm Rocky DePaula. He's Gregor Hope Murray. Have a great day, everyone.